This lesson is on section 210 titled Scientific Notation. Now, scientific notation is just a compact way of writing numbers that are very large or very small, just kind of an easier way to show a number. And that's why I'm teaching you how to do scientific notation. So, what we're going to do is we're using the outline of scientific notation. Oh, I'm sorry, did that wrong. Outline of scientific notation. This is kind of how you're going to see numbers that are written in scientific notation, where there's a number that's less than 10 times the base of 10 to some power. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the scientific notation and we're going to turn it back into standard form, which is the form that you're normally used to seeing numbers. So I'm going to just rewrite the number 8 in 6500ths. Now this is saying times 10 to the 7th power. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to look at this exponent of 7. And because it has a base of 10, makes it really easy for us because that's all we need to do is move a decimal. Moving a decimal place in our base 10 number system is really like saying multiplying by 10 or dividing by 10. In this case, we're going to be multiplying by 10. And because our exponent's 7, we're actually going to be multiplying by 10 7 times, or we're going to be moving that decimal place 7 times. So what we're going to do is we're going to move that decimal place 7 times, and we're going to move it to the right because that number is positive, that 7 is positive. So we're going to move it to the right 7 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then I'm going to add in zeros in the spaces that I made. Now I'm going to rewrite this number to make it look a little bit nicer. I'm going to include my 5 zeros at the end. Add in some commas so I know my place value. And so my new answer is 86,500,000. And this is kind of why scientific notation was kind of created, was to show a huge number like this into like a little smaller format, or a shorter format, I should say. So we turned 8 and 6500ths times 10 to the 7th power, we turn that into standard form, which is our number right here. Later in this video, what we're going to do is we're going to go from the standard form back into the scientific notation. My next example, it says to write 9 and 2/10 times 10 to the negative 3rd power in standard form. Very similar to the last example, except we have that negative sign right here that we have to talk about. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rewrite the number 9 and 2/10. Again, we're timesing by 10, so all I need to do is move my decimal. And I'm going to move my decimal 3 times, but in this case, I'm going to move my decimal to the left because that 3 is negative. So I'm going to move my decimal 1, 2, 3. Notice how I moved it to the left. I'm going to fill in the empty spaces with zeros. I'm going to rewrite. I always like to include a place value in the 1 spot. So I'm just adding that 0, rewriting my number. So then I have 92 10,000ths as my answer. Again, the difference with this one is that whenever you see a negative exponent, instead of moving the decimal to the right, we move it to the left. My next example is we're actually going to go backwards the sign. We're going to write 76,250 in scientific notation. So let's go over the outline of scientific notation again. We first have a number, and that number is timed by 10 to some sort of power. So we got to kind of fill in those blanks there. So we're going to first put this number 76,250 in this blank. But we're going to notice, and if you look back at the other example, this 9 and 2/10 and the 8 and 6500ths, those are all numbers that are less than 10. So we need to make sure that our first number is less than 10 in scientific notation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the decimal right here to make it 7 and 625,000ths. So in order to make the number less than 10. So I added that decimal in, and now this exponent is going to come from how many times we have to kind of move that decimal to get it back to its original number. So to get 7 and 625,000ths back to this original number, we have to move the decimal 1, 2, 3, 4 spots to the right So 4 is my exponent. So to kind of clean up this answer, it'd be 7,625 thousandths, but we want to kind of include that 0 in here as well, times 10 to the 4th. If you don't include that 0, this would have to change to a 5. Either way, it doesn't matter, but if that 0 is included, you'd have to make sure, if that 0, is not included, you'd have to change it to 5 because you'd have to move it over one more decimal place. The easiest thing I'm going to tell you, though, is that just include that entire number into your original problem. We're going to do one more example. So we're going to write, let's see, 157th, let's see how I read this, tenths, hundredths, thousandths, 157 hundredth thousandths in scientific notation. So I'm just going to I'm going to kind of give myself the outline. I have a number times 10 to some power. And automatically here, I know it's going to be a negative power because this is such a small number. So I'm going to kind of put that negative in place, and I'll kind of show you how that works out. So in this example, I know, so if I have this number, let's write this here. I know I have to get this number less than 10, but it has to be greater than 1. I don't know if I mentioned that in my last example, but this number has to be greater than 1, but less than 10. In order to do that, I'd have to put the decimal right here. So I'm going to rewrite this number as 1 57 hundredths times 10. Now, I have to get this back to its original number. I have to move this decimal 1, 2, 3 spots, and I have to move it 3 spots to the left, and that's how I knew the negative was going to be there. So I had to move it to the left 3 spots, so that's why my exponent is -3. So my answer is 1 57 hundredths times 10 to the -3rd power. Again, this first number here has to be between 1 and 10, and you always have to make sure you bring the decimal back to the original problem, and that's where this exponent comes into play. I hope that gave you a good understanding of scientific notation. Again, scientific notation is just kind of a shorter way of writing very large numbers. Thanks for watching.